The Florida Panthers trimmed their roster now to 35 players. We discuss who are the bubble players, who are the locks, and what could the Florida Panthers strategy be prior to the next round of cuts.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Tuesday, October 3rd edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News, and you can follow me on X at MondoMan12. Follow the show account on X and Instagram at LO_FLA Panthers. And shout out to the everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. So, Cats fans, it is a game day. The Florida Panthers will be playing a neutral site game in Orlando, Florida at the Amway Center, home of the Orlando Magic and the Orlando Solar Bears. Your boy will be there tonight. As you can see on the YouTube, my dress clothes are ready in the background, and it feels like Christmas as far as getting to go cover a game, and very excited to be going to a new barn covering hockey. I was able to cover the Florida Panthers game in Rookie Showcase in Estero, and now a new place to cover the Florida Panthers at the Amway Center tonight, which we'll be doing an intermission meetup in near the Budweiser bar in the Terrence level, section 101 at the Amway Center. So if you happen to be there tonight, holler at your boy, and I will also be tweeting it out and posting it on the Instagram page as well for a meetup tonight be in the first intermission. But prior to the game, and we'll talk more about the game in segment number 2 based on lines, power play, and all that. But the Florida Panthers did trim their roster down to 35 players. And starting off with the guys who were sent down to Charlotte for Checkers training camp: Riley Bezo, Ryan McAllister, Jake Wise, Mike Benning, Santu Kinnunen, Evan Naus, Kali Shaline, Zachary Ewens, and Ludovic Weber. And and we will get an opportunity to see these guys again next year. A little bit of seasoning needs to happen for some of these guys. I mean, Mike Benning is just coming off playing in college, just like Ryan McAllister and Jake Wise. Evan Naus is coming off a Memorial Cup, which as the preseason went, I thought that Evan Naus got a lot better. Love the way that Mike Benning moves the puck on the power play. It's going to be exciting to see what he does in Charlotte, averaging almost a point per game as well for the defenseman as well. And as far as other roster moves that the Florida Panthers made, 3 players have gone on waivers, and we don't know if they are going to be claimed yet or if they have cleared, but the following players have been placed on waivers: Jerry Mayhew, Rasmus Asplund, and Lucas Carlson. And the biggest one of them all is Lucas Carlson. You know, that was part of the trade of 2 different trades in a 6-day span, where you get rid of the contract of Brett Connolly, you put Henrik Borgstrom, sprinkling him in that trade. Lucas Carlson comes to the mix, was seen as, at the time, as AHL depth, really developed well, played a big role in the President's Trophy winning season, and one of his memorable moments, at least for me, was that road game during the Olympic break, which the NHL ended up not going to the Olympics, but it was some of the makeup games that were originally rescheduled from the Omicron variant of COVID spreading, and those games were made up. And Lucas Carlson had two major blocks where there was no goaltender there, and he blocked not one but 2, one with his body and one with his stick. So a very memorable moment that Lucas Carlson had in a Florida Panthers sweater. We don't know yet if he'll be claimed. Once again, we don't know, but there's a lot of there's a lot of fans who are not happy about this, and for good reason. He developed well in the AHL and was the leading point getter for defensemen on the checkers last year. But even before the moves of Oliver Ekman-Larsson, Nico Mikkola, and Mike Riley, you thought that Lucas Carlson was going to play a big role being the seventh defenseman, but it just goes to show where the front office and coaching staff view him. They if you're putting someone on waivers, you're okay with losing them. And for the Panthers and all and us, when we think about it, we think about is oh, the Florida Panthers are need to develop guys as far as trying to build on cheap contracts, but at the same time with a team that's ready to win now, you're not waiting for someone to develop as far as an every night role. And we didn't see an every night role for Lucas Carlson as much as we want to see him there as well. You're trying to win now. And success in one system doesn't always guarantee one in the next. But at the same time, Lucas Carlson never really had a chance in Paul Maurice's system as well. I mean, there were struggles at the beginning for some other players in Maurice's system early on, which you can point to Anton Lundell, and you can even point to a veteran like Aaron Ekblad, who did struggle with injuries. That's a little bit of a caveat there, but you also gotta read between the lines of what the Panthers view him as and what the Panthers are trying to do when building off a Stanley Cup final run. I mean, had they not made the run that they did, maybe you're thinking of putting Lucas Carlson in, but you're seeing things in a different lens when you make it all the way. You're 3 wins shy of winning it all, and you have a sense of urgency of taking advantage of your window. And like, I put a list together of all 35 players who remain with the team right now. 3 of them are on IR spots: Ekblad, Montour, and Jona Jodovic. And there's 18 locks: 6 defensemen, 11 forwards, 1 goalie. That 1 goalie is Bobrovsky. 11 forwards. You put Lomberg, you put Lorenz. I think he's a lock as well. And you're basically fighting for 3 spots. There's 14 bubble players fighting for 3 spots, and it's all dependent, once again, on if the Panthers decide to carry 3 goalies, which we'll discuss more in segment 2, which I ran a poll on. If you see a scenario of the Florida Panthers carrying 3 goalies, and the last time I checked, it was 60-40 in favor of no. So, but there's some of the bubble guys who are not, when it comes to guys trying to make the team, like a Grigory Denisenko, even though I think he still ends up there based on his contract situation, there are still other players who can go on waivers, and you're likely not going to have them claimed, like an Alexander True or John Ludwig, who have been hurt throughout training camp and are not expected to play in tonight in Orlando. But there's only 4 of them on this list who are waivers exempt: Justin Sordoff, Uvis Belinskis, Mackie Samoskevich, and Spencer Knight. Those are the only 4 of the bubble guys. And yes, Spencer Knight is a bubble guy right now. We don't know what his status is. And everyone else, and you think about this, at least this is my opinion. Your list can look a lot better, a lot different than mine. But of the bubble guys, of the 14, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 of them are defensemen. And you're thinking the Panthers might carry only 7. They're not going to carry 8, more than likely. And you think about where Matt Kierstead is as far as his one-way deal. Casey Fitzgerald has half a year under his belt, and the Panthers, every time they went 11 forward, 7D, he was the first guy in. So chances are, if you're reading between the lines, the Panthers love Casey Fitzgerald, and they want him to be back in the mix for the Panthers. As far as a guy who's been there for a few more years versus the other guys, you're likely going to see the other 3 in Kierstead, Ludwig, and on waivers, and Uvis Belinski's sent down because he's waivers exempt. As far as the forwards go, you still have an opportunity for Brett Ritchie to make something happen off his PTO, and you still have players who are big in size, like a Kevin Stenlin, who are fighting for a spot. But Kevin Stenlin has struggled to get into the lineup in his previous spots. So there's still a lot of fight for the Panthers in trying to get where they, as far as the players to trying to get on the opening night roster. So there's still a lot of battles. There's still a lot of uncertainty on who. But you think about when it comes to 18 locks, at least in my opinion, and 23 spots open, 14 players are fighting for 5 spots. So only a third of them are gonna be remaining with the roster as well. So it's a it's gonna be a grind. It's gonna be a battle for these guys to try to have that internal competition. Once again, even if they don't make the opening night roster, they go on some of them go on waivers and end up in Charlotte. You're gonna see that internal competition when they get there as one of the guys trying to improve and prove themselves as the first call-ups, because Bill Zito did speak about in the first day of media day about having more of a presence of people down in Charlotte. So it's not just because some of these guys are going to go down doesn't mean they're not going to be under a certain microscope from day in and day out. A lot of eyes are going to be on these guys regardless of what happens in these next few days of camp. But we're going to transition over to segment number 2, where we're going to discuss what situationally the Florida Panthers can do as far as putting other players with a chance to succeed and make the opening night roster, in the example of Mackie Samoskevich, and how the coaching staff can handle waivers as far as a certain goaltender. We are going to discuss that more here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. But first, we're going to tell you all about Game Time. And you shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event. Game Time is the fast and easiest way to buy tickets for all sports, music, comedy, theater events near you. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, view from your seat, and their best price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. And you can see the view from your seat before you buy, so you buy exactly what you expect when you arrive. All-in prices to show your total upfront, so you know you're getting a great deal without hidden fees. Buy tickets in seconds with 2 taps. Game Time has deals of tickets right to the start of the event and even an hour after it starts. So if you're a Florida Panthers fan who wants to see them play against the Tampa Bay Lightning tonight in Central Florida, you can definitely go to the Game Time app. It's the place to find last-minute tickets. Find exclusive flash deals and sponsored deals on tickets on football, basketball, hockey, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. With zone deals, you pick the section and Game Time picks the seats for an average of 18% savings. And the Game Time guarantees means you'll always get the best price. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Segment number 2 here on this Tuesday, October 3rd edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day today. And it was very exciting yesterday. I mean, by design, I recorded my episode, posted it, and then the lines came out for yesterday's practice just as I posted it. And I wanted to leave that for today's show, and I wanted to be surprised at the same time. And sometimes it's hard to not salivate whenever you see Mackie Samoskevich playing on the second line and getting his opportunity with the likes of Sam Bennett and Matthew Tkachuk, which that was where he was in Monday's practice. And then as far as that, even though Barkov is not going to be playing tonight, you see that a possible mix of Barkov, Rodriguez, and Carter Hagee. Third line looked like Anton Lundell, Etu Luostarinen, and Sam Reinhart. Fourth line looked like Steven Lorentz, Ryan Lomberg, and Nick Cousins. Defense pairs, like we spoke about in the locks, 6 of them look to be as far as writing them in Sharpie, pen, you name it, as locks. Forsling, OEL in the first one, Nico Mikkola and Dmitry Kulikov, and Josh Mahura and Mike Riley. But before we get into the power play for what the Panthers went through in morning skate, there was questions. There was a question directed at Paul Maurice as far as Becky Semiskevich, what has happened as far as him making these latest rounds of cuts, and what the Florida Panthers plan could be in the next few days in order to for Mackie Semiskevich to try to earn his spot in the opening night roster.
Well, he's had a good camp, and he's got NHL ready skill for sure. The learning curve in terms of how to apply it. There's something interesting about some very skilled players. The game actually gets easier for them as the cuts get made. The game is far more controlled at the NHL level. There's usually only one guy chasing you, and and everybody knows which guy it's going to be. Everybody's got a job on the ice, so there are players that can process the game more easily. The extreme would be a rookie camp game, which is quite helter-skelter. They're hard to read. So he's had a good camp. I'm going to put him in a number of different positions in terms of playing them with veteran players to get still a better read. We'll get into Tampa. They're at 28 healthy. We're at 28 healthy. So we'll see pretty thick lineups here in the next three. Both teams just trying to get ready. So these will be good tests for him.
Based off what you've previously said, just in terms of the kind of job he would have to fill if he makes the opening night roster, like just trying him out in those spots, and that might mean him taking someone else's spot.
That's pro sports, right? That's a possibility. There's a spectrum there, though, in fairness. If he could still be here potentially and not be in the opening night roster, and we're thinking we're going to get him in the first, there's a lot of different things that we can do. Prior to that, we'll get through these next three games and get a feel for where he's at. But yeah, I mean, he's not going to sit in the stands for the first 10 games, wait for me to get him in a game. He's playing hockey.
So there you go. You're not going to, if Mackie Semiskevich makes the team, he's going to be playing right away. And as that clip was playing, which you could see the full clip on the Locked On Florida Panthers YouTube channel. It's YouTube only as far as full clips. It's not going to be on the audio version. So if you want to see it there, go to the Locked On Florida Panthers YouTube channel. But the Florida Panthers did work on their power play this morning. I was able to check X while that clip was playing, and it's going to look like OEL, Matthew Tkachuk, Sam Reinhart, Evan Rodriguez, and Sam Bennett. Sam Bennett is taking Barkov's spot in the power play 1, and then power play 2 is looking like Forsling, Lundell, Luosterainen, Carver Hagee, and Semiskevich. And Semiskevich is in the bumper position in Sam Bennett's place, while Sam Bennett is up in Barkov's place as well. So Mackie Semiskevich is going to get his opportunities regardless. And, you want to see what you have out there as far as that. And Paul Maurice did confirm this morning, which we're recording this at 12:11 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon. So we have some updates based on that. And he is going to be playing with Tkachuk and Bennett on the second line tonight when the Florida Panthers take on the Tampa Bay Lightning at the Amway Center. So you're going to get an opportunity for some grit, some speed, and a whole bunch of opportunities for the youngster. I mean, this podcast should be called Locked On Mackie Semiskevich for until something happens as far as roster cuts, because that's the question that we all want to know. It's the question you guys want to know. It's the biggest storyline outside of what's going on with defense, goaltending, and all, as far as the injuries on the blue line, and if they're going to carry three goalies as well. So that Mackie is gonna. He's gonna have to earn it if he does make it, but he's for sure getting his opportunities tonight for the Florida Panthers. Paul Maurice did say that Sergei Bobrovsky will start 2 of the final 3 preseason games, but doesn't say which ones he will be starting in. Did confirm that Barkov did skate this morning, but will sit out until Saturday, so he's gonna miss the road game on Thursday against the Tampa Bay Lightning at Amalie Arena as well. So likely the preseason finale on the 7th from Emirates Bank Arena. So as far as what the Florida Panthers could do as far as the goalies, let's go to the goalies. If they carry 3, if they don't decide to carry 3, if they decide to carry 3, which this is something I spoke about on yesterday's episode of the FLA Cats hockey podcast with David Rodriguez, Kirby Lupol, and Ryan Keelan. which great episode that I recorded with him. An hour and 45 hours worth of content. We did over-unders, season predictions, a possible Forsling extension that was possibly a hot take from those two, from me, excuse me, and that raised maybe a little bit of an eyebrow. But on that show, if you already listened to this and you're listen to that show and you're listening to this, you're hearing this twice. But I do want to talk about how GMs and coaches, when it comes to evaluating goalies in this time of the preseason, especially because there is a team northwest of you who is looking for a goaltender because Andre Vasilevsky is going to be out for 2 months minimum for the Tampa Bay Lightning. So you think about the situation with Stolarz, and we don't know when he's going to start. We don't know if it in the remainder of the preseason, or it's going to be Spencer Knight. We don't know what the order is going to be. But when it comes to waivers, when it comes to goalies, you have to be very strategic on when you put them on waivers, because when you put your final round of cuts, every team is going to have a long list of players who are going to be waived. And when you have a selection so big, league wide, your chances of keeping someone are higher than in other cases if you're waiving them if you waive them in the previous round of cuts, which is why Anthony Stolarz, if the Florida Panthers think that Spencer Knight is ready, did not waive him. So they're waiting until the final few days and the final round of cuts to make that happen. But again, that's assuming that they think Spencer Knight is ready. I think it's very unlikely that the Florida Panthers do, in fact, carry 3 goalies on the roster, because I think you're going to be fine in goaltending either way if you carry 2. I think the Florida Panthers, if there's one thing that I think they got going for them, I think it's the goaltending, honestly. Sergei Bobrovsky is coming off a great run. Spencer Knight has looked sharp in this preseason as well, and Stolarz was the Panthers were carrying a lead into the third period on last Friday, and Stolarz was even though the Florida Panthers outpossessed the Carolina Hurricanes, Stolarz looked sharp either way. But it's a great situation for the Florida Panthers to be in. So you think about you have to think about when it's going to happen, if it does, as far as that. But if the Florida Panthers don't, and you start Spencer Knight in the AHL to start the year, you're still going to have Spencer Knight get his reps either way, because I spoke about with David, Kirby, and Ryan last night. The Florida Panthers' first back-to-back doesn't come until late November. You're gonna have to put someone not named Sergei Bobrovsky in every 3 or 4 games, somewhere around there. Outside of that, that's probably going to be like somewhere like a 60-40 or an 80-20. I don't know the number on the top of my head, but and we don't know, but you're gonna have to strategize it, as the Florida Panthers are going to have some gaps in between games, especially early on. After the San Jose game on the 24th, there's a few days off that the Florida Panthers will get, and they'll get a lot of rest early on in the year. So that's a little bit of what the Florida Panthers are going to be, what their strategy could be as far as that. But in segment number 3, we are going to continue our greatest Florida Panthers to ever play for the franchise, going from 25 to 21. We're going to discuss that and more here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. But first, we're going to tell you all about FanDuel Sportsbook, and snap into the action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better place to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to kick off the NFL season. And even if you are a little down on the Miami Dolphins after the shellacking that they had against the Buffalo Bills, then and you still think that they're Super Bowl favorites, their odds might have gone a little lower or higher. However, the betting terms work in that I don't and you might want to go to fanduel.com and /locked on to get in on that. FanDuel, the official partner of the National Football League. Third and final segment here on this Tuesday, October 3rd edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So continuing our countdown of the greatest Florida Panthers to play for the franchise. If you want to listen to 30 through 26, go to yesterday's episode. We discussed that. And on the post-game show with Jacob Winans, which will be later tonight, we will be going over 20 to 16. So prepare for that, as we are going to be going to continue revealing our list. So number 25 comes goaltender Thomas Vokoun, and played 4 seasons with the Florida Panthers. And in a span, you want to know where the Florida Panthers ranked as far as goals per game, shots per game. Goals per game, They were 27th in the NHL offensively. So Thomas Vokoun didn't have a lot of goal support as far as his time with the Florida Panthers under Pete DeBoer. And in 2008 alone, 2,213 shots, average 32 shots against per game. The Florida Panthers also in that span were last in most shots against per game at 33.6, and a points percentage of 498 in that span, 141, 142, and 45. And even prior to Vokoun signing with the Florida Panthers, a 919 and a 920 save percentage in the last 2 years in Nashville. Top 10 in Vezina in 2009, and won 20 games each year for the Florida Panthers. And the Florida Panthers in that year, 93 points, but close, but no cigar as far as making the postseason that year. And a lot of turnover as well through the Florida Panthers in their front office as well, with Jacques Martin to Randy Sexton, even though he only lasted a year. And Jacques Martin was fired as coach, but the ownership was like, hey, but you could stay as the GM as well. So this is an era of Florida Panthers hockey, which we're going to go deeper into when we reveal other players that, you think about how dark these ages were for the franchise. 24 comes Radek Dvorak, the Panthers' first-round pick in 1995, 10th overall, and 2 stints with the Florida Panthers from 1995 to 2000, and traded to the New York Rangers for Hall of Famer Mike Vernon, where Florida made the playoffs before being swept by the New Jersey Devils. Excuse me, he was traded to the Sharks, then flipped to the New York Rangers. My apologies for Mike Vernon. And also signed as a free agent and spent 3.5 seasons with the Florida Panthers before being traded to the Atlanta Thrashers for Nicholas Burfers and Patrick Rissmiller as well. So Radek Dvorak's tenure with the Florida Panthers, 9 years, 613 games played, 113 goals, 155 assists for 268 points. And time on ice, as far as Hockey Reference, was not recorded until 1998, but the remaining years for Radek Dvorak averaged 18 minutes and 37 seconds of time on ice per game, and was part of 2 playoff appearances for the Florida Panthers, one of them being the run to the Stanley Cup final in 1996, and the very next year before the Florida Panthers lost to the New York Rangers in round 1. Number 23 comes Nathan Horton, the Florida Panthers' 2003 third overall pick in the first round, and one of 2 times that Panthers GM Rick Dudley traded the first overall pick and traded back. And although Luongo was on the team and he was your goalie, it was a missed opportunity for the Florida Panthers to draft Eric Staal in his prime. But think about what Nathan Horton and another player that we are going to discuss in a later episode of this rankings about what Nathan Horton went through as far as amount of GMs and head coaches. And you know what the number is of GMs that Nathan Horton has had in his tenure with the Panthers? 5. Rick Dudley, Mike Keenan, Jacques Martin, Randy Sexton, even though he was a short tenure there. And then Dale Talon, it was a short tenure for him, for their relationship as well, even though Dale Talon was with the franchise for 10 years. Immediately when taking over the job, traded Nathan Horton to the Boston Bruins. And then the Panthers ended up drafting Nick Bjugstad with that pick after trading back four spots. And they also got Dennis Weidman out of that. And Nathan Horton also had 4 head coaches: Rick Dudley, John Torcelli, Jacques Martin, and Peter DeBoer. So really hard to really explode on the scene when you're having so many different systems, so many different head coaches as well. And and for Horton, the points didn't come until his 3rd season with the Panthers as well. Really started to explode, and with 16 game-winning goals, 5 shorthanded goals, and 37 power play goals during his time with the Panthers. And those are, and you also think about this: no playoff appearances, and even though plus minus isn't the be all end all stat, he still finished his tenure with the Florida Panthers with a plus 27 during his time with the Cats before being traded to the Boston Bruins, where eventually he won the Stanley Cup. And it's painful when you see a player that you put so much high investment in and you just can't take advantage of their talent to build a championship team around. And a lot of turmoil with the Panthers as far as ownership and all the relocation rumors as well, which it's thankfully put to rest for now. 22 comes forward Sam Bennett, a current Panther, who the Florida Panthers traded 2 second-round picks. And if you're Nick Fairbanks, I know Nick Fairbanks is not on the show right now, he'll probably say trade another 2 for Sam Bennett, a second-round pick, and Panthers prospect Emil Hyman, which traded for Sam Bennett, solidifying the top 2 center spots as a guy who brings such a physical presence and was we saw the impact even in the Stanley Cup run when he entered the picture in Game 2 of the opening round series against the Boston Bruins, scored immediately in that game. And in 3 years, 144 games played, 104 points, and he went from 14 minutes of time on ice in Calgary to 17 with the Florida Panthers. Transition from wing to center, where Sam Bennett was meant to play, and averages two hits a game for the big body forward, and valuable piece that the Florida Panthers currently have on their roster still. Number 21 is Victor Kozlov, was traded to the Florida Panthers midseason 1998. For the most part, a journeyman, but played 7 years in Florida and was on the same line as Pavel Bure, where he had a career highs in assists and points in the 2000 season before eventually the Florida Panthers being swept by the New Jersey Devils in round 1 in 2000. And then a few years later, in 2004, March 1st, 2004, traded to the New Jersey Devils as far as that. 414 games played, 101 goals, 190 assists for 291 points, and got a lot of points on the power play too, 99 of them to be exact, 36 goals, 63 assists. And him and Pavel Bure were like best friends on the ice as far as how their production was and all. So those are your top. Those are 25 to 21 as far as the newest rankings revealed for the Florida Panthers. As far as that, on tomorrow's edition, after we discuss the Florida Panthers is preseason game against the Tampa Bay Lightning, we are going to be discussing 20 to 16 on the list. And I hope you guys are enjoying the content as far as celebrating the 30th anniversary of the Florida Panthers. But tomorrow's show, it's a Wine-Ins Wednesday, breaking down the game, breaking down the atmosphere, how hockey has grown in Florida, and I'm very excited to be heading over there in just a few hours to be seeing the Florida Panthers against the Tampa Bay Lightning, and seeing especially how Mackie Samoskevich looks in person. But in the meantime, if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast and be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to those shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey with Flip Livingstone and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez, signing off. And you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.